If I have one salesperson, things will go, and I'll have a salesperson. I want to take that. That's what I'm saying. What would you do to help? So, of course, students are thinking about the things you're working on. Second thing is introducing when you work with them through the next that's the time and say, this is what I have said. But I guess if I haven't answered the question.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So in the next few minutes, I would say we should probably grab any other food that we want to get or drinks and kind of move into this center area here. So we can kind of gather around, if you will. Since we don't have a huge crowd tonight, it'd be nice if we kind of came into the center. Anyway, and Leanne, who prepared all this wonderful food, is also going to tell us a little bit about her business and what we're eating tonight and any details she wants to share. So, appreciate it. If you want to come on up. Yeah, thank you. She is the chef and owner of Bento Picnic, so she's going to tell us a little bit about that.
So again, my name is Leanne Valenti, and thank you so much for the opportunity to cater here tonight. This is a company, Bento Picnic, that I started here in Austin 3 years ago, and we specialize in healthy Japanese-style lunches and happy hour spreads and catering like this. And I'd love to, have the opportunity to serve you either if you have any catering needs and or you just want to stop by our space. We're over on Cesar Chavez near Pleasant Valley. So we're on the east side. And thank you again. Mel is a fellow woman entrepreneur, and so it's really good to be in a community where it's really supportive and where there's a focus on wellness, taking care of ourselves. And I just have such a passion for bringing people foods that both taste delicious and are just going to give you the energy to sustain you through your day. So we're delicious by design and nourishing by nature. And again, my name's Leanne over at Bento Picnic. Let me know if there's anything that we can be doing for y'all. I'd be happy to.
Thank you. And she has some flyers up there. If you want to grab a card or like a menu, you can take it with you. So we'll give ourselves a few minutes to kind of gather around, and we'll start in maybe like 5 minutes.
I'm driving around like green. Yeah. It's the rain. People are freaking out here. I mean,
Yeah. Have not. Actually, I went to 60 and they sent me back there. Really started probably looked at brains because yeah. How did you end up being in charge of this for Austin? The woman who's doing it and also writing a book about the laundry around that. Okay. Busy to put out the call. I raised my hand so that I want to do this. But I really appreciate the group. More so. Do other things. I mean, you're busy. Yeah. So now this is one. Cool. So another thing I want to do is thank Capital Factory for allowing us in this awesome space. I've been telling a few of the guests here tonight that this space just opened in May. So this is one of the first really opportunities for us to use it. This is our third one we've done here in the space, but we kind of relaunched with me as the director. I'm Damon, by the way. We relaunched it, and this was our first place to do it, so it's super awesome, and I'm really appreciative to them. We also have a sponsor for tonight, Atlassian. They're an enterprise software company that makes tools for pretty much any kind of collaboration, including developer collaboration, document collaboration. And there's a huge Atlassian office on 3rd in Colorado. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction, but somewhere over there. And so they're supporting us, and they're great supporters of the Austin startup community. So it's super awesome to have them supporting us too. So is everybody kind of ready to get started? Everybody in the back there, you want to join us over here? Guys?
Yeah, we're ready.
Sweet. All right. I think that's pretty much all the announcements. Has anybody been to a startup grind before? A few of you? Now, what was your name again? So he comes from China, and he has actually helped run Startup Grind as a volunteer in China. So he saw this event, and he said, I'm new to Austin, I need to go. So that was super cool. So he came by. All the way from China. So, and then the other ones who had come, did you come in Austin, or did you go in other cities?
Other cities.
Okay. Where did you go? Salt Lake? San Francisco? Nice. So you're comparing this to, like it was born in Silicon Valley, so, So I guess we can get started. I want to welcome Melanie to come up here. She's our guest of honor tonight. Thank you for coming. Let me give you a microphone. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll give you mine.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Damon and I have seen each other in the startup streets for years.
Yes.
And been like, we should be friends.
Yeah.
And then so when he asked me on Startup Grind, it was a cool opportunity to actually sit down and have a cup of coffee and say, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so we're going to go into a little bit of that tonight. Let me turn this on. Sorry, we do everything ourselves here. The only person I have helping me is Keenan. Where is he? He's helping me a tremendous amount, so big hand for him. He's helping me check people in, make sure everything's running. So anyway, I guess we can get started. So welcome everyone, and welcome to you.
Thank you.
So what we want to do tonight is talk to Mel about her entrepreneurial past, her journey, how she got to where she is, how she became who she is. And we'll see where that conversation goes. Sound good?
That sounds great. I'm going to tell the truth.
Well, one thing we talked about in our conversation was that entrepreneurship is sort of glorified, particularly in the media these days, as this, amazing thing you do, and it doesn't necessarily show the struggles that you go through as an entrepreneur. And I'm sure anyone who's actually done it has lots of stories, and Mel has stories of, the things that she's been through. But I want to take a step back to before you actually became a founder. What were you doing, and kind of where do you come from? How can we get a sense for who you were back then?
Yeah. Sure. So I started my career in the advertising industry. And I, before starting my company, actually was the third employee at a startup ad agency. And I started our digital marketing practice there, and then I led our business development practice. And the whole time working in advertising, I always had this itchy feeling like I meant to start something, and I would start lots of different side projects. Once there was a project I started called Hold Your Own. I used to date someone who loved baseball, and he would talk about baseball all the time with the guys at the bar, and I would have nothing to say. And so it was very boring. So I started this company called Hold Your Own, and it was for women who don't watch sports but want to be able to hold their own in a conversation with their significant others. And I hired 7 writing interns who were journalism majors in college, and had them write a quick who's LeBron? Why do I care?
I like it.
It turns out people who don't care about sports just really don't, and so no one read it. But it was
Problem solved.
Right,
So
right.
you did it back then.
But it was in the career advertising that I really realized who I was and sort of learned about my superpowers. Being the number 3 in an ad agency meant that, it's kind of all hands on board in every startup. And so I was 25, and I was pitching CEOs and CFOs, CMOs of legitimate companies across finance, journalism, Wall Street Journal, Daily News, which is a New York publication, pitching strategies that I'd written the day before, and they were shaking their heads, and then they would buy it, and I would think, holy shit, I made that up yesterday. Why do you believe me? And I remember joining that company because I worked at a much bigger firm before that, and I didn't join this startup thinking yes, more advertising. I thought to myself, I'm going to watch how you guys do it. And what I learned was that you make it up. I remember realizing the moment they were making it up. It's there is no book on this. There's no rule book, there's no instruction manual, you just kind of go. And that was a really big aha for me. Yeah.
It reminds me a bit about that. Has anyone seen that Steve Jobs video where he talks about the moment that you realize when you kind of push the world and punch a hole in the world and have it kind of go a different direction because of something that you did, that you're never the same afterwards. There's some video of the Silicon Valley Historical Society that has him talking about that, and it's powerful, and it changed him when he realized that he could change things. So you were working in the advertising industry, and this was like roughly what year was this?
I think I left the industry, gosh, in 2012. So I started in 2008, 2007.
Mm-hmm. So you spent a few years doing that, and you left the industry. Is that the time that you came to Austin, or was there a little gap in there?
Yeah, there was a gap. I mean, there was an overlap actually. So
Okay.
I started butting heads with one of the founders at the agency, and I was really burning out at that. And my boyfriend at the time got a job at the Facebook office, which had just opened. And he said, "Come with me," and I was like, "Holy shit!" And I decided to take the leap, and I took the founders out to lunch, and I said, "Hey, I'm moving to Texas." And I was very triumphant, like quitting my job, you know, like super pumped to be out of that career. And what happened was I had just sold in our second largest account, and I delivered a social media strategy to a finance company, and literally we won it the day before I quit, and they didn't know how to execute on what I sold in. So they actually went and resigned the account, to which the account responded, "No, you hire her as a consultant or we will, because we're already set on executing on this." And so the founders of the agency called me in and said, "Would you please stay and consult, and you'll have your feet on the ground, you know, while you figure out what you're going to do." And my boyfriend was like, "Don't be an idiot. Take it, you know, you don't have income." So I ended up working like this half-time remote gig, running biz dev for them and staying that account up for 2 years actually after I moved here. And I started my company 6 months after I moved here. So I was doing both jobs for about a year and a half overlap. But it's worth noting that the company I started then is not the company that I run now. Though it is an evolution of it. And there are people in this town who give presentations about lean startup style. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I am the queen of that, the queen. Anyway, so the original seed of my company started then.
Yeah. So that's an interesting story. So how did you come to found that first company in Austin? How did you become a founder? You thought you might want to do something, but something happened when you got here. It's Austin. It's in the water, right? You start companies. That's what you do. But you have an interesting story about that.
Well, I came here with no idea of what I would do, and I thought, you know, they say in New York, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, or something like that. And I thought, well, I don't even know what they're doing in Austin, small town, but just wait till I hit the streets, and I just figured I'd see what I made of myself, you know? My first 6 months here were the most depressing. I didn't have any friends, I didn't know anyone, and I was working a remote part-time job, so I was sitting in an apartment, like, staring at the walls. I had been a runner for about 10, 11 years of my life, and I had a running blog. You can still see it at melruns.com. Little internet breadcrumbs for you. It was very much like a mommy blog. I would go run 3 miles, eat Cheerios, and take a picture of my Cheerios, and talk about how I ran. And I was spending a lot of time on that blog. And one day I just had the realization, I should be making money. Why don't I just start a business? I thought I'd become some kind of fitness professional, some kind of fitness writer from doing that. I don't know if this is the story you expected me to tell, so I
didn't hear this one.
I have a lot. I took a leap, and I started reading Austin Fit magazine, and I started noting all the people who had bylines were either registered dietitians or personal trainers. They had some kind of credential. So I thought I need a credential. So I went and spent $3,000 on a personal training school and got certified as a personal trainer. 3 months in a classroom. And I came out of that, and it didn't make a lick of difference in trying to get bylines anywhere. And I thought, damn it, that was an expensive mistake. What am I going to do? And I was for sure I didn't want to train anybody. So it took me a month of thinking about it. And one day I was getting ready to get in the shower, and I just thought, can't someone else train people for me? And I was like, that's it. So that night I posted an ad on Craigslist, and I said, hey, Austin personal trainers, I've got a really well-read blog, which it was not well-read. Like my friends, my parents read it. I'll feature you on the blog, and if you get clients from that, I'll take a cut and we'll make a deal. And so I started hustling these personal trainers, and I would have them all give me a free session so I could try out their services, and then I would write up their profile and put them on the website. And I started going, and I guess I was like a month further into that, and I can hack together a website, and I can mess with CSS and HTML, but I don't know how to build transactional functions, not actually a developer. So again, I'm working from home, staring at the walls. I don't know anybody. I had read before I came here. Austin was on all the top 10 lists, and one of the things, it was like one of the best startup cities. So I was like, where's this scene? And I wasn't in the startup scene in New York. I was in the ad scene. And I spent a whole entire day Googling it. It was not easy to find. And I found this event called Startup Weekend. Are you guys familiar with Startup Weekend? So I found it. I didn't really know what it was, but it said there'd be a lot of developers there. And I thought, cool, I'll meet developers. So I bought a ticket and I went to it. And then I ended up winning Startup Weekend in 2012 with this idea of developing a network of personal trainers and matching people to it, and that was the start of the business. So the first name for it was Trainer Link Up, and it was the idea where we would deliver a personal trainer to your door, to your specifications, like Tuesday, Thursday, 8 a.m., and the business model was us handling the cash flow and sort of taking a cut. And that was the birth.
As just like a side note, I think I was actually at that Startup Weekend, and I saw her present that and win, and it's just kind of a funny threads that we weave in Austin. It's such a small town. So you built something during this weekend, and enough to impress people that this was a real thing. So when you have a prototype like that, what do you do next? You obviously are a hustler. You're telling me stories about how you're hustling people and you're making things happen.
As soon as I said I hustled, I was like, that was bad.
Is hustle negative or positive? I can't tell these days. It's positive now. It used to be negative. Now it's positive. But I think you meant it in a positive way, right?
I did.
But what do you do next?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I did, though.
Okay.
We had 8 people on the team, and all the wise mentors in town were really, startups can only have 2 or 3 founders. And I was like, you don't know anything. Watch me break all the rules. And sure enough, we ended up whittling down to 2 people after 3 months. And I had no idea how to launch a consumer business. My background is in B2B sales. So with the prototype, essentially the next step is to validate it on a larger scale. We validated it during Startup Weekend, but you do that in a way that does not at all scale. You make some quick phone calls, you get people to answer surveys. I think we got 2 customers to actually give us money. We won that event probably because the idea was good, but also because I know how to pitch. But knowing how to pitch and give a talk to a room has nothing to do with executing a business. And I didn't know that. So I picked this B2C model, and I really didn't know how to launch that. And so what we started doing was flyering. I remember driving, I didn't even know the city. And the people on this team from Startup Weekend were like, this is Westlake. We were going and putting flyers up everywhere. I think I was running Craigslist ads. It was all completely bootstrapped. I didn't have a lot of money. And that's how we started going. And I think in our first year, we made $26,000. Which felt like a total failure because I wanted to live off the business and I wasn't. But that's what we started doing.
So when this happened and you actually created a business out of a weekend, out of nothing, did that, fire off any neurons in your head that said, this is cool, or I want to get some funding or something to make this even bigger? What was going through your mind? You just disappointed?
When it wasn't what I wanted it to be?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about funding because there was no model that was working. I just got to this point where I remember asking myself, how do you know when your startup failed? Like, how do you know? When is it time to quit? And I started thinking about quitting it. And one of my mentors, my best mentors in my life, was one of the founders of that agency I worked at. And I called him and I said, I think it's not working. At which point he said, well, look, I've got 3 startup ideas. I'll hire you to execute any one of them. And I said, okay, let me think about that. At the same time, I was thinking about dropping the business. I actually had an opportunity to speak at a conference in Iceland called Startup Iceland. And I was speaking about the intersection of branding and startups. When does it matter to start branding? Having a brand presence when you just launch a company. And so I made that presentation and I gave it. And in the presentation, I talked a lot about what then later became known as Fit Steady, which is the next name of my company. I think there are 4 total names we've had. There were pictures of me. I used to lead, there's a meetup group on meetup.com called Austin Wellness Walks. I think there's like hundreds of people in it. I started that when I was struggling with the company because I thought, let me get out there and talk to people and see what they need. I clearly don't know my customer well enough. So there were pictures of me in this presentation, like doing these wellness walks and showing how you live the brand from day one. It's about the mission. And there's a term that I still bring up that I created for that presentation, which is thinking about reactions versus transactions. So many startups are chasing the next dollar that they forget about the way their customers interacting with them and the reaction they're giving the customer. And people always remember how you make them feel, you know. So I gave this big grandiose talk and I walked off stage and I thought, man, if I quit, I'm a liar. And that felt really bad. Also, for some reason I'll never know, while I was away in Iceland, we gained more customers in that 1 week than we had in the whole year and a half I'd ever done that business. And it wasn't because I was speaking in Iceland that no one in America knew that was happening. I don't know why it happened. And I just thought, all right, universe, I see you. And I took it as a sign not to quit, which led to the next big pivot. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Oh, that's great. So that sort of looking for a sign or seeing a sign, is that something that you already were accustomed to doing? Or was that new for you?
That was new for me. I wasn't looking for a sign. It just happened. And then I also, was surrounded by amazing entrepreneurs, and the founder who's essentially founded the Airbnb of Iceland kind of became my good buddy that weekend. And I shared my story with him, and he just looked at me and he was like, I know entrepreneurs, and I see them, and you have it, and you shouldn't quit. So there was that, coupled with the sign-ups, coupled with this, like, telling this real great story about how I'm living the brand, and then feeling like I had to. So the signs just kind of happened. But now I ask for signs. Ever since then, when I don't know what to do, when it's a big decision, I will ask for a sign.
So at this point, you've kind of got you're cooking with gas a little bit, you're getting some customers, you don't know why. How many people are in your company at this point?
5.
5, okay. And did you have, what kind of roles were they? Like, do you have salespeople, or did you operations people? Like, who did you have?
It was me and me. It was me. Yeah.
Okay.
With Fit Steady, I had a developer. So when I started it, I had, I didn't have money. I didn't really have anything to give. And so when people told me they would work with me, I was just so busy being grateful that I didn't actually evaluate if they were good people to work with. And so I brought on a lot of people that weren't good to work with. And that didn't work out. So I ended up alone. And I forgot, you asked me.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering who was in your company at that time and what roles they had. It was mostly just you.
It was mostly me, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people are in that situation where they want to get something built and they don't know how to build. And so they will try to convince someone to work with them. And they struggle with that. How do you How do you do that when you have, like you said, not much to offer?
It's about the mission. So you paint a very grand vision about what you're after. You have to really mean it. And since pivoting the company, I've had the opportunity to work with some wildly smart, wonderful people who just really believe in what we're doing. And I would say that's the way, because when people are really bought into the mission and the purpose, and they feel like they have a purpose, the money actually really doesn't matter anymore. Also, of course, you can play the equity card and give equity.
So what was the next evolution of the company, and how did it come about? Like, how did you get to that next phase?
So I went home super excited.
After the conference?
Right, after that Iceland conference. And I remember a lot of things happened. I broke up with my boyfriend. I moved out. I was sleeping on an air mattress on a floor in this small apartment. And I woke up, grabbed my computer, ran Dominican Joe's, which I just learned is no longer Dominican Joe's.
It's true, sad but true.
I pulled up an Excel spreadsheet, which I still send to people to use when you're having trouble making decisions. And in this sheet, I wrote down, so we were making 26 grand, I needed 15 more customers to be able to live off of that business. And I was determined to figure out how to get them. So I wrote a bunch of ideas down, like here's the idea, here's how it goes to market, here's how many customers I think we could acquire in 1 month, here's how much money it would take, here's why this idea is good, and here's why it's bad. And then at the end there was a score. And I wrote down all the ideas, I scored all of them, and then I ranked the spreadsheet, and to the top of the list rose, provide fitness classes at universities or companies, and then your trainers will have a giant marketing channel of hundreds of people. And surely people will fall in love with these trainers and sign up for personal training sessions, and we'll get 15 more customers. And that idea was the pivotal turning point. So I created a cold email draft. I got on LinkedIn. I looked up HR people who I thought would be ideal companies in town for this. I tried to figure out their email addresses like you do when you're trying to cold email anybody. I sent out 12 emails. I got 7 meetings, and I closed 2 accounts in a month and a half. And that's when Wellshift was born. So in the first company, I got meetings with HomeAway, Mass Relevance, Spreadfast. And I met with HomeAway, and I was like, well, Spreadfast is talking about this. And I would kind of play them off each other. It was just me in a PowerPoint. I played the we game. This is what we do, and this is how we work. And what happened was they were like, yeah, we want yoga. We want fitness classes. Also, do you know anyone who does nutrition classes? And I would say, we do that too. Let me come back to you with the fitness nutrition package. And I would go home. I Googled nutritionists. This woman, Emily, came up. I called Emily and I said, yeah, what can you do at companies? She was like, I don't know, lunch and learn. And I said, how much do you want to make? And she said, I don't know, maybe $100 an hour. And I was great. So I marked it up to $300 an hour, and I went back to the company, and I showed them this package, and they bought it. And I was like, well, cool. And to me, it was the same thing, because I'm just getting people places to do their jobs, so it just felt like logistics. And then this kept happening. Hey, do you know anyone who does massage also? Oh, we do that too. Oh, do you know anyone who does team building? And when I had 4 accounts, I was reading a book. I don't know if it was Crossing the Chasm. There's like one of those very famous startup books, and I had the aha, and I was like, holy shit, I think I just started a corporate wellness company. And that was really when the pivot began.
So, can you talk about how this company is kind of a manifestation of your own values? Since you mentioned mission earlier.
I think I can go so many places with this. I'm just going to start from wherever. Values, knowing your own personal values is one of the most important things that you can ever do for yourself. And a lot of times now when I speak about startups or I speak to entrepreneurs or even executives, I want to share this very important insight, which is the most important business you will ever build is yourself. And when people start their own companies or take really big career changes, they put their lives on hold. And the thing about that is you only get one life. And so you put yourself in immediate jeopardy of losing your experience of life, you know? People put startup founders on pedestals because they make extraordinary contributions to the world, like Elon Musk, or you could think of a million other people, but they don't stop to ask what it was actually like to live the life of that person. Did they actually feel extraordinary? And the answer is most likely no. You know, they're grinding, startup grind. When I worked in the advertising world, I did that. I mean, you're in the grind, you get in early, you stay late, and you say to yourself, and we say this on our customer calls all the time, oh, I'll take care of myself, I'll go to the gym before work, or I'll finally sew that project I wanted to after work, and you just don't. You just get home and you're tired, and you order Chinese food, and you wake up and you do it again, right? So for me, what's important is living an extraordinary life, that I feel extraordinary. I have learned a lot about wellness, a lot about how it works, a lot about how we create it. I've come to understand that each individual is the only one responsible for their experience of life and their well-being. And so that became the mantra that we set at Wellshift, is we help employees live extraordinary lives because we're bringing life back to work. Important metrics, you spend more than half your waking life at work. So if you go to work, you're not having a good time, you're throwing half of your life away. And if you were to die tomorrow, you would look back and be like, why the fuck did I do that? The only moment that's ever real is the one that's happening right now. So if you've got a big lump of time in your life that you're dedicating yourself to that doesn't feel good, ask yourself how to make a change as soon as possible. Because if you're waiting for tomorrow to change it, it's not a that's not a real shift that you're creating. You're making an excuse and putting it off, which is what most people do.
I love that sentiment. I'm wondering, how do people who need to eat also want to live their passion and need to feed their family or need to eat? Sometimes those two things are incongruous, at least for some period of time. So how do you break out of that such that those two things are aligned and you make your money from the same way that you live your passion, as it were?
So I want to start by saying that I didn't do that right at first. So I had to learn that afterwards. At one point...
Feel free to talk about that if you want to explain how you got there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a super critical question for so many people.
Well, after not doing it right, I committed to making financial security my second value. So I know all of my values, and I know them in priority order. Because it's fundamental to have that exercise. When you start a company, you create the mission and the values that all your employees operate by. You need that compass for your life as well. So financial security goes in at number 2. Because when you don't have it, when you don't take heed to what you just said, you walk around with these fear glasses on, these panic glasses on, and you look at everything with panic in your eyes. And I did not realize how much that painted my world until I got to the other side of it. But I went a whole year without knowing how I was going to make rent every month. And it shows up everywhere in your life. You just don't feel as confident. You don't want people to know. You go to parties, you don't want to talk to people because you just you feel like you're hiding. You feel like you're lying. And I experienced that in a very, very real way. And I'm glad that I experienced it, but I don't want to again. So what I would say, and this is something I talked with you about a little bit, sales ops, is just make sure you have a strong, a steady financial place. You have to make sure your financials are there. So you can quit your job only if you have runway, and only if you've vetted that runway can most likely get you to a place where you have sustainable revenue. And I don't know, for people who are new to starting a business, runway basically means how much money do I have left where I don't need more money. So how much more money do I have till the company's out of money and we have to shut down? So let's say, one way to do it would be to just save up a lot of money. And then I would start validating the idea way before you quit the job. That's still not enough proof to quit your job. Then the next thing you have to do is get that validation of an operational cadence such that you can predict that customers are going to come in and close on X amount of customers per month at X amount of revenue. Until you have predictable revenue, you cannot quit your job and know you're going to be okay. And that's okay. Like, it's up to you if you want to take that risk, because like, you run out of runway, you just go get a new job. There's plenty of jobs out there, especially if you're bold enough to start a company. You're beyond intelligent enough to be hired anywhere. So I would just say to be careful. You could also raise money. That's the route a lot of people go. Friends and family would be a good place to start if it's your first business, and raise however much you need. Typically, friends and family might be somewhere under $200,000 or right around that mark. And then figure out how you're going to spend that money, and I would allocate as much of it as you can to sales. And get money coming in the door. If you're doing it the way I did, lean, didn't raise a ton of money.
For the longest time, I ran this hack night in Austin that was every Tuesday night, and we would do side projects. It's called Cafe Bedouins. And it was creating a space for people to work on things that were outside of their job, which was really valuable, I think, thing to create for people, because it gave them permission almost to experiment, to create things. But over time, I had this conversation with a friend of mine when I would call things side projects. He would say with his side thing that became a business, he said, it was always my main thing. It was my main thing. My side thing was my main thing. And I thought that was really powerful, because I had been talking about side projects for years as this great thing, which they can be, and they can turn into really powerful future directions for you. But this notion that we can just kind of do things on the side and that's going to be a business it's questionable, because it's very difficult to start a business. There are hobbies and there are businesses. So I guess given that setup, it's like, how do you find your main thing such that you support yourself until you can, merge these two things like we talked about, but how do you know what is your main thing? You said something to me the other day. You said, I know what I'm here to do. I was like, who is this person? She knows what she's here to do. I mean, how fortunate, right, that she has achieved that state. Most people, I think, struggle with this. And I thought that was a super powerful thing to say. Kind of took me aback, honestly. But I would love to just have you kind of share with us, like, how did you get to that state, and how do others find their main thing? Do you have any advice?
Yes. Typically, it's the thing you get the most joy from. That's your superpower. That's your home base. So I would say that the thing I get the most joy from is teaching and engaging people to understand that they are the creators of their experience of life, and this now moment is the right time to make it extraordinary. That's what that's one of my main messages. What I'm here to do is to help millions, if not billions, of people step into their power for peace, inner peace. And I know that through losing mine. And through losing mine, I had the opportunity to find it again. And when I found it again, I said, I have to tell as many people as possible about this reality. Because when I started the company, talking about this financial stuff, I started it with the goal of being on Forbes' list of 30 under 30 and on the cover of Fast Company and, super cool young female entrepreneur starts the next big business. When that doesn't happen, reality kind of slaps you in the face, and you have to ask yourself what you're doing it for. And so that I faced that reality really hard. So I get a high from speaking in front of people. It's the number one fear of America, and it's my number one thing I love to do the most. So for me, that's my joyous place, and then the message I have to give I'm very clear on, so that my two paths intersect there. I think the thing that brings you the most joy is a conduit for you to send whatever message you want through it, right? So like when I think about that purpose, for me, Wellshift delivers on that. A couple of other projects I do deliver on that. So you can find your superpower, figure out where you have your most joy, and then you can iterate on how you use it and where you put it. There's a lot of different shapes and flavors that you can put on if you love writing code. Like, okay, what do you want to code? You know, like match up your joy with a purpose that really sings to you. And the purpose usually will come from some sort of past experience. A lot of times it comes from a moment of crisis. Mine came from a moment of crisis. Or some kind of catastrophic event, or a loss, or just an aha moment. There's two main ways people are motivated. You're either motivated towards something amazing, or you're motivated to get away from something awful. So you'll probably find motivation in one of those two states. You can only be, people are usually one or the other. It's actually more common to be away motivated than toward motivated. Also good to know the highest achievers in the world are both motivated. They find a way to run away from something and want to run towards something at the same time, and those two make you more powerful than one or the other. But those are the little pockets I would dig into to find where that passion is for yourself. The joy and purpose intersection.
Awesome. One of the things I also wanted to touch on, which is related to this, is your organization that you've started, that you're wanting to grow even further beyond Austin. If you could tell people a little bit about that project.
I love this project. So this project is called Peace Potluck. Something that I am fascinated by is building community. There's a book, if anyone's interested in community, that I highly recommend you read. It's called A Different Drum, and it's A Different Drum, and the subtitle is Community and Peacemaking. It's by a psychotherapist named Scott Peck, who also wrote The Road Less Traveled, which is a much more well-known book. And I read that book, and I just got chills the whole time, and I was like underlining it and putting numbers, and I was like, oh wow, this is the instruction manual for community. And in my journey of learning about wellness, I learned that, you know, having that inner peace within is the most powerful thing you can have. But then uniting in a place of community to share that, you start to get exponential. And that's when we can start to shift the world. So Peace Potluck is an experiment for me to start building a global community for peace. And it was birthed out of a really honest place. I feel called to be a leader. I don't know why. I just feel it. And so I'm going to do it. So I wrestle with that. I wrestle with the ego of that. Like, do I just want to be in the spotlight, you know? And it's like, yeah. And then the other side of me is like, well, so what? So go be in the spotlight, but use it for good. And so I'm stepping into that, you know, place. And there was this is a year ago, August, there was the shooting in the gay club in Miami, the massacre. And then there were also incidences of people being shot by policemen, and people were videotaping that and putting it on Facebook. And they were happening concurrently. And I did not know what to say or do about it. And I usually have things to say. I mean, like, I don't do political rants, but just have some, like, love and light about things. And I really didn't know what to say or do, and I felt stupid and naive. I almost felt, like, embarrassed that I wasn't doing anything about it. I didn't know what to do. So I invited, like, 25 or so of my friends to come over, and I said, I just feel called to have us have a potluck dinner and talk about peace, because I don't know how to address these things. And I remember standing in Central Market writing out that invitation, and I started crying, and I just thought, like, this is something important. And like 30 people ended up showing up at my house that night. Marina was one of them. And we ended up packing out my living room. There was really no agenda. And people sitting all over the floor, different races, they were children. And I just said, hey, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to have these conversations, but we should have them, and we should get real. Does anyone know why this is happening? When it got real, a friend of mine, Jen, is Vietnamese, and she started telling her story, and she was like, how come every time I walk into a restaurant, all the white people look at me in Austin? Why am I the only Asian person in every room? And I was like, why'd you move to a city of all white people? Like, you knew what you were getting into. And we were able to say those things to each other where, like, usually you can't say those things. So the conversations were really real, and afterwards, I'm getting the chills right now as I talk about it. We were like, this should keep going. So since then, we've been experimenting, and we've held, I think, 6 or 7 now, peace potlucks. Ruben Cantu, sitting right there, is now joined the team and is building that, and Marina also. We're all building it together, and we see a vision where the world can be united to make positive human progress towards peace. And each peace potluck now, we focus on one of the United Nations global goals. So we would just pick topics out of a hat, in the beginning, and then we thought, someone's already done this work. The United Nations did a whole bunch of research to figure out what really matters, and they have the 17 global goals, so why don't we just line up with the UN? So now at each peace potluck, we focus on one of the UN's goals, and actually this Sunday at my home, I'm hosting the Vice President of the Ocean Conservancy to talk about the global goal, Life Underwater. So it's taking these global goals and facilitating conversation at a local level. And now that we've done it and experimented with the model a bunch, we are beginning to scale. So the mission is to launch these in over 50% of the cities in the world. And we are starting with LA, and Baton Rouge are launching in September. And then we're looking at Dallas. Then we're going to pause, see how that's going, and then keep scaling from there. And so we're building out the foundation and the launch kits, the cadence, the value systems, and seeing how far we can go. It feels like it'll be a 20-year experiment.
Talk about finding meaningful work. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
So I want to turn it over to the audience for some questions in a minute, but I was wondering from your point of view, is there anything else you wanted to bring up or anything you want to kind of close with on our talk, and then we'll let them ask questions?
Yeah, thank you for offering that. There are a few things I wanted to make sure I touched on. Creating your own personal value system is very, very important. Putting your own health before the health of your company is very, very important. And I do want to talk a little bit about employee wellness and what I've learned. Just interesting facts. So after selling wellness activities to companies for going on 4.5 years, the #1 most loved wellness benefit is massage. We have sold fascinating, cutting edge workshops on happiness and creativity, and it doesn't matter. People just want to shut their brains off. And it turns out massage is the most effective way to do that. So we're essentially running a corporate massage business now. And you heard the story, it's not where we started, didn't know it's where we were going. And for a while I was in denial of that because I thought, I don't want to run a massage company, there was something wrong with that. When you deny what the market's telling you to do, you're just going to sit in a place of tension and friction and not be able to grow your business. So when the market tells you something, try and listen as quickly as possible. The other reason why I think it's important, or why massage ended up sticking the most, is there's some wild stats that I cannot believe don't see the light of day. Harvard Business Review published a study that said the stress we experience at work is responsible for an increase of 35% diagnosed chronic illnesses. 35%. Because of the stress at work. In working with Google and delivering wellness programs to Google, I can tell you the #1 thing that they look at is work-related stress. Lowering work-related stress in the workplace is their wellness team's #1 metric. So if you do start a company, take care of your teams. It's really, really, really important. That's the last thing I want to share.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to throw it out to the audience here. Does anyone have any questions for Melanie right now? Been holding on to your question, Haas.
Hi. 2 questions actually. First one, which of the 2 motivators do you see yourself, or did you see yourself kind of going in that kind of direction?
I'm a toward motivator. I like
Tour.
fly through the sky on a pony. Yeah.
Knowing what you know now versus knowing what you knew then, do you see yourself evolving the kind of company you're at now, or potentially doing something else entirely different?
I think in 5 years I'll do something different, but I'm committed to growing this company right now. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Joe.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah.
My name's Joe. I was curious just about the size of the business today. Do you have any other employees and kind of what the status is currently, as well as the fact of second question about the stress metric that you just talked about. Given that everyone knows stress is bad, less stress equals good, why do you think there's such friction, with startups and in corporate America to really make that a top priority to resolve?
First question is, we're a team of 5. We have a wellness network of the professionals actually going out of upwards of 50. We're currently operating in 3 states. Why companies don't address stress is because it seems to cost money to do that. They want people working all day. So what the really smart companies who have money do is they set up workplace environments that give employees every single thing at their fingertips. So if you look at Google, they feed them all the meals. Google has weekly massage, 100% compensated. It's one of the only wellness benefits we see, get 100% compensation in a lot of places. We just had a phone call earlier today with Airbnb talking about what they're doing. And they're bringing in things like music classes. They get it. And it's really cool to see that. Most companies don't get it. And they think the way to make more money is to grind harder. But there's a reverse correlation with grinding harder and being productive. But that's not the knowledge that America has soaked up. Industrial Revolution training is still alive and well, and it says you put in these hours because that makes us produce more coal, which puts more money in my pocket. But in the kind of work we're doing, a lot of us are doing white collar. The functions up here don't function as well when you're beyond your energy capacity. So I went on quite a mission to change that and kind of dispel it and reverse the definition of the way people are thinking, and it's a lot of work. You can Google me and you'll see a bunch of talks that I've given a lot of places. I call it the big secret about wellness, and it has to do with shifting your culture, shifting the habits that you're promoting in your workplace is really the only way to truly have a well company. But it takes a lot of work to do that, and it's expensive to make the shift if you didn't start that way. So it's probably why it's not addressed as much as it could be. A really good question.
Definitely. Anybody else have questions? More over here. Okay.
So not to be the asshole in the suit, but at what point does it become too much? So free lunches, massages, therapists. Is there a point where we overindulge and it's an expectation that we set for people to come into the workplace that they go, I'm out because if you don't give me these 20 things, I won't accept this? Or is there some sort of balance we can reach?
There's a lot of thoughts that just popped in my head when you said that. I don't think you can take care of your team too much. I can see how if you're a competing company, you could get pissed off that the talent over there gets all this stuff and I can't afford it, and that's not fair. But I think you can combat that by allowing a lot of flexibility. So flexibility is like a really good superhero in benefits land if you have really no money. Flexibility is valued very, very high. It comes up in the top 5 values of the Gallup poll that surveys what values matter at companies and benefits. So that would be a way to supplement and to allow people to go have time to do those things versus making them live most of their lives in front of a desk and not taking care of themselves. Thank you for being the jerk in the suit.
He's actually not a jerk.
Thank you so much for giving your speech and making this kind of an open environment to ask questions. I think that you have a really great personality in being able to do that. Anyway, my question is on your principles. I am definitely in a space where I'm kind of in a pickle, but much happier where I am today than where I was yesterday, 3 months ago. So yeah, I also see the importance of those principles, and I have very strong principles for myself and what I'm doing, and that's why I am where I am. But at the same time, yeah, I'd love to hear what your principles are, and maybe even going back and addressing my own.
My number one value is freedom of time and space. So the way we built our company is we're a remote company. Everyone loves working that way. So we've put intentional systems in place for daily communication, like statuses, like ways that we're all always connected. It's very easy these days to do that. There's a lot of things you can read about that. But I value freedom, and I want mine. So that's number one for me. Number two is financial security. Because I went so long without it, and I know how it can taint your experience of life, I refuse to do that again. My third is service to the world. That's what I'm here to do. Fourth is community. Fifth is adventure. Last three, everything I do has to have some possibility of scaling globally. That's just really important to me. Can't tell you why, just something I feel inside. Mastery. I like to be great at everything I do, and if I can't be great at it, I'm not very interested in doing it. And then the third one, the last one, I'm wavering on whether I'm going to commit it into the value system, is healing. And I think it falls under service. So, those are my values.
Cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, you have one? Okay. So I was just informed that we have someone asking a question on Facebook Live.
Whoa,
Randy Burton is watching. And she says a few different things, but one thing she's wondering is she has a bunch of ideas, and she really wants to find a partner or a co-founder to help her launch some of her ideas, and she wants to know where she should look.
That's great. There's a great meetup in town. I'm actually speaking at it on Monday. It's like the Austin Co-Founders meetup. That's a great place that you can go, and if you're not ready to speak in front of a room, you can just shake everyone's hand and let them know. I think they give you a little name tag, and you can say if you're looking for a founder. I found some co-founders there's a lot of business competitions in town, one startup weekend, there's 3-day startup, and if you're in Austin, there's a chapter here. And then I would say there are other meetup groups. There's something called the Internet Marketing Party that happens in Austin once a month, where internet marketers go and talk to each other, and a lot of them are capable of starting companies. I imagine every city has some kind of ecosystem like that. Another great place would be co-working spaces. People at co-working spaces want to meet each other and tend to mingle a lot in kitchens and ask what you're doing, what you're working on, and I've seen a lot of people pair up that way. In fact, I met Marina that way, and now we work very closely together on a daily basis.
Question to kind of go back to the one that you did. You're young. How did you come to figure out what those values are and be able to articulate it so clearly? And how did you know that that was what needed to guide not only your life, but the work that you do?
I've been in some really dark places. And when you go there, you have to decide whether you're going to get up or not. And every time I decided to get up. And every time you go there, you learn something new about yourself that you refuse to sacrifice again. And that's how I got a lot of those. So some of them are through moments, the moments through defining moments. And some of them are through gut instinct, like global. I didn't have a crisis about that or something, but I just have a knowingness that I want to do things that touch the whole world. And so your instinct is actually way smarter than your rational thoughts.
To just pay attention.
Yeah, I would say slow down and listen. Also, if you're about to start that exercise of figuring them out, I would find a very quiet place where you feel wonderful and just start writing and see what comes out. The values can always be adjusted. Something that helped guide me to find them is where you start is you start writing down the things that get you really excited about what you want to do in your life. So you might say, I want to travel, and I really want 2 houses, and I want to fix the fence in my house, and I want my children to go to good colleges. And then you look at that list of things that get you really excited to accomplish, and you ask, why? Why do I want to travel? Because I really like adventure. Why do I want this fence in my house, around my house? Because I really value feeling safe and secure. And so you can work backwards from the where we're used to thinking, which is like all the things I want, and back up into the actual underlying feeling you're after. You're welcome.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It was incredibly interesting. I'm in a bit of a similar situation to you where I moved to Austin a few months ago. I'm working remotely for a market research company, not a ad company, but close enough. I moved here to follow my boyfriend, and it's been a bit of an adjustment. I'm kind of realizing that that's not the industry I want to be in, and I want to make a massive shift. Apart from just stalking people on LinkedIn and going to meetups, what would your advice be to try and break into a different industry where you kind of don't know anyone and don't quite know how to get a foothold?
I get a lot of emails from people who say, I've hired people who chased me down. It would be my dream to work for you. Like, will you please get coffee with me? You know, and it's like, holy shit, absolutely. So if you go after people who you're fascinated by and that whose mission touches you, and you ask them to talk with you, I bet you'll get a 50% response rate.
So it's like cool and not creepy.
It's totally cool. I've been flattered, and the integrity and quality of those people, I mean, was crazy high. So I would encourage you to follow through on whatever you say you'll do when you talk to these people. I guess I would say start talking to people. You could do what I did, which is just quit your job. You know, I would check the financial security box before you do that, though. Coming to meetups like this is a really good thing to do. Going to the co-founders meetup, all the things I just said earlier, I think would be really good. And I'd also say start doing the thing you want to do. Start trying it. I tried a lot of businesses. I mean, I only told 2 stories. The company I'm running now, and the Hold Your Own. There were a lot in between that clearly didn't make it. You only learn by doing, and what happens is once you start actually being the person, it'll naturally start being attracted to you. There's no way it won't be. So if you just start experimenting, what will happen is you'll go to these things and say, oh, well, look what I'm starting, you know, look what I'm trying to do. And you will be perceived as a founder and as someone who's an innovator because you are one. So just start running your own experiments, and you'll be received as someone who's making changes in the world because that's who you'll be.
That's really valuable. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Joe again. One more on the topic of women in entrepreneurship. Being a white American male, I don't exactly have the experience to know some of the struggles that minorities or women face when trying to build a business, and some of the unique challenges. What would you say to someone like me, people like me, to not do and to do to support women that want to do great, extraordinary things?
We give a round of applause. What a beautiful question. I personally have never faced discrimination as a woman running a business. For me, it has always been a one-up. I mean, and maybe it's because our community here is so progressive, where it's like, oh, woman founder, like get on stage, or I imagine I'm lucky because I have a lot of girlfriends who have not had that experience. It's hard work to change bias, but you can start by doing it for you. I'm guilty myself. I remember the one moment I hired 2 people for the same exact role, 2 different regional sales managers, and I paid the man more than the woman. And I didn't realize I did it until after I did it. And it was because I was intimidated by the man, and I thought that he wouldn't work for me unless I increased his compensation package. The woman outperformed the man, by the way, in sales. So I would start just with you. I would slow down and watch how you treat women. It's very easy to be dismissive. It's the power. The vision of power, I think, lives in the masculine right now. When we think of business, we think of powerful men. We don't think of powerful women. When you are approached by a woman, I have friends who get brushed off a lot, and people who won't do deals with them because they think they're playing a little game. I have had multiple friends call me crying, leaving meetings from that. So the biggest thing you could do is be the change, not to be cliche. But it will start with your actions. I don't think that you can be responsible for changing other people's actions unless you make that a mission of yours. And if you have a company and you have the opportunity to, there are classes you can bring in that teach how to change gender bias. In fact, Wellshift offers those classes. We'd be happy to deliver them for you. There are subtle things in body language and in keywords and communication that can mean the difference of a good relationship or a lawsuit. Fun fact, when you're communicating with someone, 90% of what they're receiving is your body language, and only 10% of it is the words floating over that. And in the communication going between men and women, the physical cues are a lot of times what's crossing the line. I have had colleagues who I would walk into a room, and this was at the ad agency, not at my company, and I've had men walk into the room and kind of hold me by the small of my back when there was no reason to be touching me, and like their hand would slide down. And I remember turning red. There we were, and I was presenting. So what are you going to do? Just start yelling at the person? So it's very, very sly ways that it goes down. That's not answering your question. But be the change, and if you have the opportunity to educate other people, take it, I would say. Also, Jan Ryan is a champion for women in town. I don't know if you're familiar with her. But if any other people are interested in how Austin in particular is championing women, she started an organization called Women at Austin, and their goal is to triple the amount of funded women, I think, in 2 years from now. Last year it was 3 years, so I think now it's probably 2 years from now. And they have a whole network of VCs and angels who particularly only fund women-founded businesses, and they have networking groups on a monthly basis where they teach you about finances and marketing and sales, all focused particularly towards women. And these types of leadership roles are popping up in cities all over the place. So that is another way that it's being combated. Thank you for that question.
One thing that comes to mind is call out bad behavior when you see it.
Yeah.
And that provides support, at least. So I think we should wrap up this portion and then move on to, we're going to do a little bit more networking and hang out together. So thank you very much, Mel, for the interview and for answering everyone's questions. It's been really, really awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for coming. Hope you're enjoying yourselves.
Oh, thank you.
Finding a company.
Yeah.
How exciting, how that all
When I first started when I was going through the accelerator in 2011, just started.
Yeah.
There was already someone out there doing expense at that point. Hey, Ann, good to see you.
How's it going? Yeah, we met from Gus.
That's right. Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah.
But you weren't wearing a cap yet.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Coming back.
How's it going?
Good.
We go back way
Oh, yeah? 2010, that's cool.
So I don't know if I was just telling you.
That's what I was saying. Congratulating him on
I was like, I don't know how much
company
or how you did it. Yeah, I was about to tell him the story.
Okay.
So this guy was already doing switching software in 2011. Yeah, and I called him up and like, hey, maybe we can work together or something. But at that point, he had like 280 clients. So it wasn't really that. Yeah, it wasn't that interested in it. And then we were kind of just friendly competitors. We might talk to each other. I never met him in person. And then this last August, there was Atlanta.
Oh, that's right.
And Atlanta's the biggest swim market by far. So one problem is he's always he has a free tier to his no account. So there's been a problem that I've had that it's hard to get people. For me, it's like $500 a year. So just having a free option. But I knew he wasn't something like and so
Is he full-time?
So we, exchanged emails and occasional talks. But I ran into him in person for the first time in March. I ran into him I asked him about the sales kind of process. He's on a older technology platform. We're like the team in the show. So we figured out a way where it's basically yeah, so I've since well past them in terms of number of teams that we have. And it makes a lot more money than so he wants to still he's a very personal guy. Yeah, he's going to be like brand ambassador. No, it's all through us. He's like at these meetings, like where people come up and be like, that's like part of his identity, right? He wants to be he's proud. He's pumped about it. So we've got it structured so that his customers convert on platform. That's how much money is it's over and the reason that is like there's some amount the first year that when I'm really pumped. So I was in Atlanta last week to kind of because he's got a half plus to talk to the team. I've been nervous because people want free. There were a few people that are hung up on price, but by and large, I'm really excited about how that went. And now, combining with them together, we're the biggest. It's like in the segment, it's the biggest segment. Don't worry about it.
Cool. Good deal. So it's all buttoned up and everything?
Yeah, it's all signed in June. They're doing
So we still that's what I was saying. I think we're going to still sign it. It'll be right. That's awesome, man. Good stuff.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I'm sure. Did you get to go through with the board?
So Gordon's on my board. And actually, I'm the one who introduced Gordon to Capital. I went to Capital Chapter. Gordon went to Capital. So the way I met Gordon is he's a swimmer guy, right? Yeah. So before we started swimming, so Goldie Trample. So that's all. But I was in all the board meetings and had a good relationship. And I was kind of after him to invest for a long time. It's just me. So in 2010, one spot was Melanie. That summer, I'd been building they recap.
Yeah, I've been on the working with
So I learned a lot there. Because I started there when it was PowerPoint back. I spent the economy dropped in 2008. A lot of customers are so we had to pivot before then we're charging a couple $1,000 sound like you can keep that ready to go. And we have it next week. We're not going to put we had to switch. Now it's more like yeah. So that was the start of it. But in 2010, I'd been building a swim team for years, not as a business, but just to help run my kids' swim team. And it was good enough. People were asking if they were paying me. It's easy. So that summer, I was like, okay, I'll do this. Gave one spot notice in October, and then we committed to like finish this transition. This summer. And that experience one thing here is like, I feel like I quit my job too soon because I just jumped out the door with new customers. It was like, okay, let's do this. And my initial plan was like that I'd have 500 customers.
So then we got so Joel obviously.
Yeah, so Joel and Gordon were at next door. And they knew each other. And so then, while I was going through the Capital Chapter program at Angel program, Gordon was looking around for things to invest in, saw that I was connected to Joel, saw I was swimming, connected to Joel, and said, hey, you know
things that he loves.
Yeah.
Joel and swimming.
Yeah. And so then Joel said, yeah, I'm kind of interested in it. We talked to him. And so then Gordon was the first person that came in. And Joel put some
got it.
and then I connected to Joel to he's not Gordon. He can't. Sorry.
The major player. I can't do this right now. Much work to get
Comes in. One spot? That last year at one spot, I spent about a year doing all the real-time bidding at networks. One of the ad units we had was that from making $5,000 subscription. I did an ad unit, the first time we had 50. And so we so, and then the huge challenge was, since we got an ad unit, they didn't want us to exceed their advertising inside sales. So we got a huge list of, these are all the people who cannot sell. And it was like Express, airlines, all of the companies, right? Those are the people they're selling. At the same time, they want to protect their brand. So we got this whole list of all these categories of athletes and not being self-correction. You can't do like mortgage refinance, losing belly fat, any of that kind of stuff. You're not doing anything like that. So we ended up with like this little slide of the kinds of things that we sell. And to none of them were, ad server, technically active, really trying to age up switch to
the reason I asked you what
give us some sort of it wasn't so, it was more like the technology was really trying to do. We had someone didn't really have much experience. Instead, we were able to I saw Matt he said a couple months ago,
Oh yeah, a little bit of that. So there's much larger.
Okay. Yeah. So I met Matt. It was before the 2000. My cousin Coin that so he had just decided to do a dinner party one night and just invited a bunch of random people to the and he was just trying to connect all these different spheres.
That's how you guys do it.
It was like 20 people. And the crazy thing is that night Kevin, he does all these issues. He worked this so Kevin was like 3 hours late. Right? So he was the only one who knew anybody. And we couldn't get in touch with him. So it was like he invited all of us and then he didn't show up. So it was this real weird yeah, it was no, it's North by Northwest. And so we're at a big table and we just started like introducing ourselves.
Nobody knows.
No one knows anybody. So have you seen the movie Reservoir Dogs? So all the bank robbers are in front of that movie, they're around the table, they don't know each other, so they keep moving around or whatever. But it was that awkwardness of like trying to size each other up. But by the time Kevin showed up with his cast on, we all like knew each other. That's where I met now. And then I ended up at that time I was working at Frog Design. I left there.
Yeah, Frogs, you've got to have some interesting projects and things. I'm sure you're out there too. Frog was, are they still here?
Yeah, they have, I left in 2006 right before. They used to be Google.
Yeah.
So they used to be that big economy. Maybe it just opened an office.
Hi, Elisa. Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, congrats. Good luck.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing the next company you buy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I had no, you'd asked me in January if I was going to buy a company.
Good deal. All right. Say hi to this.
Analysis of it and mention buttons.
Yes, you got to be in midway through kind of stuff.
But I'm moving the conversation. Man, you were the one traveler. Yes, I really like watching the Facebook feed. That was cool. Did you guys